Roanoke Island lay between North Carolina's coast and the state's outer banks. Although it was less than 10 miles long and only 2 miles wide, its location was strategically important. Confederate defenses included 3 forts on the western side of the island: Bartow, Blanchard, and Eugene, and about 3,000 men from North Carolina and Virginia regiments. The troops had been bolstered by the recent arrival of reinforcements. The Southern naval forces protecting the island consisted of 8 converted workboats that were disparagingly called the Mosquito Fleet. The Confederate forces were commanded by Brigadier General Henry Wise. However, he had fallen ill. Henry Shaw, a former U.S. representative and colonel of the 8th North Carolina, led the defenders when the Burnside expedition arrived.
This place, this island, is the cork in the bottle, so to speak. As you can see over my shoulder, with body of water is the Albemarle Sound. This leads into Plymouth and all the interior waterways from here. To the south of the island is Pamlico Sound and the Neuse River Basin, which will give you New Bern. It was Burnside's idea to bring ships up here and move the troops by amphibious assault. In the first true U.S. amphibious assault under fire, the troops will land here on February 7th, 1862, under a blistering fire of about 30 Union gunboats, Army and Navy combined, which will fire on the 3 Confederate forts here on the island and 1 on the mainland.
The Federal naval forces bombarded and set fire to Fort Bartow and pushed aside the Mosquito Fleet, which withdrew to Elizabeth City. Union infantry began landing during the afternoon of February 7th in Ashby's Harbor, on the western side of Roanoke Island.
On February 8th, the Union Army, now 11,500 strong, against a roughly 25 to 3,000 man Confederate force in the area, decides to advance up the main road.
The Union ground forces were organized into 3 brigades. The units were led by Brigadier Generals John Foster, Jesse Reno, and John Parke, with regiments from Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island.
The 25th Massachusetts in advance, skirmishing with Confederates under Henry Wise of the 46th Virginia and some North Carolinians. They drive them back across the field, and as soon as the 25th Massachusetts enters the field, they start beginning to engage the entire Confederate line, the earthworks included. They expend all their ammunition, all 40 rounds, and then soon find that they have to withdraw. As they're withdrawing, the next regiment in line, the 10th Connecticut, shows up, and in the exchange actually fires on the 25th Massachusetts accidentally. It's a series of fights that's going to happen throughout the day. As new regiments move in, seeing shadows in the smoke, they open fire, not realizing who's blue and who's red. The 10th Connecticut will hunker down in the swampy grass for a while the remainder of Foster's brigade will start going to the right, try to go through the swampy area on the eastern side of the island. They bog down almost immediately, fighting tussock to tussock. One Union veteran who was there said, if you were at Roanoke Island and didn't get wet, you weren't at Roanoke Island.
After about 4 hours of intense fighting through haze and swampy ground, Union troops were finally able to take a 3-gun battery at the center of the Confederate line and push the defenders back into their camps, where they were forced to surrender. The Federal forces had captured Roanoke Island, about 2,500 Confederate soldiers, and 32 artillery pieces, with just a few dozen casualties. Roanoke Island would become the site of a freedmen's colony for liberated and runaway slaves from around the region. By the end of the war, about 3,500 refugees would call the island home.
2 days after the battle here on Roanoke Island, the Union Navy went hunting. And they found the Confederate Navy, the Mosquito Fleet, up in Elizabeth City. The Union Navy, limiting in its actual artillery, was told by Commodore Rowan not to waste any ammunition at long range, but to close in and almost grapple with their components.
The superior federal naval forces made short work of the Mosquito fleet, scattering and sinking it. The Confederate fleet's flagship, the Seabird, was run down by a Union warship and sunk in a collision. After securing Elizabeth City on February 10th, Federal troops captured Edenton 2 days later.
With that, no Confederate forces in northeastern North Carolina were available for any defenses whatsoever for another few weeks.